Hi, I'm Richard Davies, host of How Do We Fix It and Let's Find Common Ground. Both of these podcasts are members of our shared community, the Democracy Group. The topic of this lesson is how to interview like a pro. I'll share practical tips based on 4 decades of experience as a radio journalist, reporter, newscaster, talk show host, and most recently, podcaster. This lesson includes ideas about how to speak with almost anyone in a relaxed, confident, and curious way. Many pros, or people who actually make a living interviewing celebrities and politicians, aren't that good at it. They lack curiosity. They aren't good listeners. Both of those things are crucial. While practice helps all of us acquire any skill, attitude is also important, and that's especially true with interviewing. We can always improve, no matter how long we've been doing it. I've recorded interviews with people in almost any kind of situation, from plane crash survivors and people who've lost their homes in natural disasters to slick politicians, successful business leaders, and people in the street during political demonstrations or at campaign rallies. So here are 8 tips for conducting your best podcast interview ever. First, before the interview begins, put your guests at ease. Be as warm and friendly as possible. Look them in the eye. Make sure that your guests are comfortable and have a glass of water if possible. This will help them relax. You might want to start your conversation with a personal story or an amusing anecdote just to loosen them up. When planning your interview, try to build a story arc. For example, on How Do We Fix It, during the first half of the interview, we ask expert guests how to describe the problem we're discussing. Then we pivot to the second half and ask for suggestions about solutions or how to think about the problem in a different way. The third part of the interview may well be personal. For example, how did you become so passionate or interested in the subject that we're talking about? Tip number 2, be curious and involved. Hosts who are genuinely interested in what their guests have to say are much more engaging and fully present than those who want to show off or tell the audience how much they know. Third tip, consider asking dumb questions. I'll give you an example. While on the presidential campaign trail as a network news reporter, I often asked candidates at a press conference, "How do you feel?" That question was sometimes accompanied by eye rolls and quiet laughter from fellow seasoned journalists. But that "how do we feel" question often brought forth the best soundbite of the day because it was unexpected. Reminding expert guests of their humanity, their emotions, can prompt greater honesty. If a guest uses acronyms, slang, or fancy words, ask for an explanation of what they mean. This is helpful to your audience, and you are their advocate. Tip number 4, be personal. Explore your guest's passion. Why did she or he write their new book? How did his hobby become his job? Asking personal questions can enhance the intimacy of the interview. If you're worried about how personal a question should be, then consider asking your guest about it in the pre-interview or before the recording begins. 5th tip, a good podcast encounter is more than you had planned for in advance. Listen carefully to what your guest is saying. Despite loads of preparation, great interviews rarely follow a pre-scripted course. Tip 6. Ask follow-up questions. I like the simple phrase, "Tell me more." That invites the guest to continue with the story without throwing them off course with a lengthy question. A brief invitation to explain further is so much better than repeatedly flattering your guest. "That's so interesting," or "It's such a good point you're making." Works once or twice during a 30-minute conversation, but usually no more than that. Tip number 7, keep your questions short. When possible, use humor and charm to keep the interview from becoming too formal. You are the host. You should guide the interview, but in most cases, the conversation is about what the guest has to say. It's not about you. However, don't be afraid to gently push back if you disagree. The sparks that fly during an interview can end up being the most entertaining moments. Final tip, number 8. Keep the recorder on. Don't switch off the mic until you are absolutely certain that the interview really is over. In the chatter that sometimes follows that last question, after you think the interview is over, the guest might utter the most quotable quote of the past half hour. Ouch! Often I've turned off my recorder too early and have been quite upset that I did. Good luck.